The second sentence is this. We love which virtue you are gifted from Jesus Christ. The speaker indicates the object of the transitive verb love with the subordinate clause, which virtue you are gifted from Jesus Christ. The object indicated by the subordinate clause receives the definition of the transitive verb from the subject to include the speaker. In the subordinate clause, which virtue you are gifted from Jesus Christ, the past participle gifted to practice the role as a subjective complement with the trait as an adjective conveys the definition of the transitive verb gift to the object indicated by the phrase of the noun which virtue. As the subordinate clause is stated in the passive voice of the speaker, who focuses on the perspective of the indirect object, who finally receive the definition of the transitive verb gift and the direct object from the subject, Jesus Christ. In the subordinate clause stated in the perspective of the indirect object, as the listeners, the object indicated by the phrase of the subordinating conjunction which virtue receives the definition of the transitive verb gift from the second transitivity that the past participle gifted includes. The past participle focuses on the recipient of the transitivity that a transitive verb or a preposition has. So the description by the past participle declares the end of the relationship with the subject, mediated by the definition of the transitive verb or preposition. The object indicated by the phrase of the noun which virtue indicates the object to receive the definition of the past participle gifted, because even though the perspective to state a sentence to describe the conveyance into the perspective in the indirect objects you, the fact that the indirect objects receive the definition of the transitive verb gift and the direct object is constant. The definition of the transitive verb gift is the premise for the listeners to the description by the past participle gifted is prior to the direct object indicated by the phrase of the relative noun which virtue. The past participle gifted is applied as a subjective complement to describe the condition of the subject, who are the listeners, has the second transitivity of the definition. The sentence, we love which virtue you are gifted from Jesus Christ, is integrated from the two clauses. The first conference to be the subordinate clause is this: which virtue are you gifted from Jesus Christ? The second conference to be the main clause is this: we love the virtue. The speaker links the interrogative clause transformed into the declarative clause to the main clause as the subordinate clause, because the subject of the be verb are indicated by the phrase of the noun which virtue corresponds with the object of the transitive verb love, indicated by the phrase of the noun, the virtue. The speaker links the interrogative clause transformed into the declarative clause, so that the speaker links the declarative clause as the subordinate clause to the main clause. The speaker links the subordinate clause to the main clause because of the accordance between the two indications. The first indication is the phrase of the relative noun, which virtue. The second indication is indicated by the phrase of the noun, the virtue. From this accordance, the speaker replaces the object of the transitive verb love into the subordinate clause, which virtue you are gifted from Jesus Christ. The inversion between the subject you and the be verb are in the arrangement, the listeners can understand that the clause starts with the phrase of the relative noun, which virtue is stated in the declarative clause,